Hello everyone! In the previous video, I have talked about the course I am currently teaching, which is text analysis. If you watched it, you will understand that this course covers 6 main units dealing with the different approaches to the analysis of texts. Among them is the semiotic approach, which is the subject of today's video. First of all, we will start with the objectives of the lecture so you know what to expect. Then, we will have an introduction to semiotics, which is the study of signs and how meaning is made. After that, we will move into Barth's approach to visual texts, focusing on how he applies semiology to images, and particularly how visual myths are created and understood. Then, we will shift our attention to linguistic texts again through the lens of Barth's theory, to see how language can also function as a system of signs that support ideological meanings. Towards the end, we will look at the relevance of Barth's theories in the field of text analysis. And finally, I will give you a brief conclusion that ties all the key points together. In terms of the objectives, after completing this chapter, students will be able to explain the core principles of Barth's semiology, focusing on denotation, connotation, and myth. Apply Barth's semiotic framework to interpret various texts in order to reveal their underlying cultural and ideological meanings. Interpret how ideological and cultural messages are conveyed in texts by analyzing myths and exploring the construction of meaning through semiotic systems. Let's now start with an introduction to the field of semiotics. Semiotics is the study of signs and symbols in communication. In text analysis, it helps uncover how meaning is created through different modes, written, visual, and cultural. Roland Barthes developed semiology, which is a branch of semiotics that focuses on the deeper meanings of cultural artifacts. Semiology, as developed by Roland Barthes, studies signs and their meanings in cultural contexts. Building on Saussure's ideas, Barthes explored how signs work in visual as well as linguistic forms, focusing on 3 levels of meaning: denotation, connotation, and myth. Therefore, understanding Barthes' semiology equips us to critically analyze how texts contribute to cultural and societal narratives. Let's look at how Barthes applies semiology to visual texts. According to him, images function just like language. They communicate meaning through a system of signs. Each visual sign consists of 2 main components, the signifier and the signified, and these are of course concepts developed by Ferdinand de Saussure. The signifier is the physical form, what we see, for example, a picture of a red rose. The signified is the concept or idea that the image evokes. In this case, it's something like love, romance, or passion. Roland Barthes goes a step further and explains that visual texts work on 2 levels of meaning. So the signifier and signified of Barthes becomes denotation, which is the first and literal meaning of the image. The second level is connotation, and this is where meaning becomes richer and more subjective. It is shaped by culture, history, and emotions. So depending on the context, the red rose might connote love, beauty, danger, or even political resistance. So according to Roland Barthes, it's this level, connotation, that gives image their power to convey ideology or cultural myths, which we will explore in more details shortly. Building on our previous discussion about denotation and connotation, Barthes introduces the powerful concept of myth in visual texts. For him, a myth is not just a fictional story, it's a second layer of meaning that makes certain cultural values or ideologies seem natural, self-evident, or even universal truths. He explains that myths and visuals serve to naturalize cultural ideologies. In other words, they make specific historical or political ideas feel like common sense, so we no longer question them and we take them for granted. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine a photograph of a soldier holding a child during a war. At the denotative level, it simply represents an act of compassion. At the connotative level, it might suggest heroism, protection, or patriotism. But on a mythological level, it goes further. It may subtly reinforce ideas about moral superiority or the righteousness of one group over another in the context of that war. So while the image appears natural or emotional, it actually carries powerful ideological messages. Just as he did with visual texts, Barth argued that linguistic texts, that is, words, phrases, and sentences, also operate as systems of signs. He maintained that language does not just communicate literal meanings. Words can carry deep connotations and even support mythical structures that reflect and perpetuate cultural ideologies. Let's break this down. At the first level, we have denotation. This is the literal or dictionary definition of the word. At the second level, we have connotation, the emotional, cultural, and political associations that go beyond the literal meaning. These are shaped by the context, audience, and society in which the word is used. Let's take the word freedom as an example, especially in political speech. Denotatively, it means the state of being free from restrictions. But connotatively, it might evoke powerful ideas like individual rights, democracy, or national pride, depending on who is using the word and in what context. On a mythological level, the word like freedom can even be used to justify war, resistance, or state policies, making the ideology behind those actions appear legitimate or morally superior. So, according to Barth, language often naturalizes ideologies through myths, presenting specific cultural norms as universal truths. If we take, for example, the expression hard work pays off in motivational contexts. At a denotative level, it is just a statement about effort and reward. At a connotative level, it connotes the idealization of effort as a pathway to success. But on a mythological level, it reinforces the capitalist ideology that hard work alone determines social mobility, ignoring systemic inequalities. So why is Barth's semiology still so relevant, especially when it comes to text analysis today? First, there is accessibility. Barth's concepts like denotation, connotation, and myth are not overly abstract. They are clear, structured, and easy to apply. Second, his theory is highly versatile. It's not limited to literary texts. We can apply it to advertisements, social media posts, fashion, new headlines, and more. Third, Barth encourages critical thinking. His notion of myth pushes us to look beneath the surface of text and ask what ideologies are being promoted, what's being normalized. In this way, semiology becomes a tool not just for interpretation but for ideological critique. And finally, Barth's work is extremely relevant to modern communication. In an age dominated by visual media, digital texts, and symbolic culture, understanding the interplay between language and image is more important than ever. As a conclusion, Barth's semiology reveals how signs in both visual and linguistic texts function to communicate explicit meanings while embedding cultural and ideological messages. His theories encourage us to question the naturalized meanings in everyday communication, making his framework a valuable tool for critical analysis across modes. And here are the references I used in order to design my video. Thank you very much for watching.